Just one night, Knox begged, catching Cleo's saddlebag before she could lash it to the bay mare. She demanded one honest reason he had any right to stop her, so he cupped her face beneath the porch lantern and kissed her. Then hoofbeats rolled beyond the open gate, the same hidden riders who had circled Rhodes Ranch for 3 nights, and Cleo's fingers closed around his coat while the road to town turned from escape into a trap. Knox held the kiss for one startled heartbeat more, not to claim her, because she had leaned into him, and because the sound beyond the gate had gone still. When he lifted his head, the last New Mexico light lay copper across the porch boards. Cleo's eyes stayed closed for half a breath. She was 27, sun-browned, proud, and far too practiced at looking untouched by anything. Her hand remained twisted in the dusty wool over his chest. Knox was 41 and had spent 20 years reading signs other men missed. He had no such skill with a woman after a kiss. He only knew better than to make the next choice for her. He loosened his hold and left his palm against her cheek. "The mare stays saddled," he said. "The gate stays open, but you do not take the east road tonight." Cleo opened her eyes, and the softness vanished. "Why?" 3 shod horses waited in the eastern arroyo at noon. One rider left a cigar ash under the cottonwoods. "They know you ride to Las Vegas after dark when you do not want your hands seen by you." "You followed me." "I followed them." "That was not my question." "No." Knox lowered his hand. "I noticed your habit. There is a difference, though I reckon it may not feel like one." Beyond the rail, the bay mare tossed her head. Cleo had kept the horse saddled beside the porch since Knox hired on for the spring tally. The ranch hands called it readiness. Knox had come to understand it as a door she carried with her. "I stay one night," Cleo said. "You lock nothing. You do not unsaddle my horse. Every decision concerning this ranch remains mine." "Would not have it any other way." "And that kiss never becomes an argument you use against me." "It will not." She studied him, then took the saddlebag and hung it over the porch rail instead of the mare. Knox wanted to call that trust. He knew better. It was only her choice not to flee before supper. He stepped into the yard and walked toward the bunkhouse without looking back. A man did not prove he was safe by standing over a woman until she agreed. Cold settled from the Sangre de Cristo peaks after midnight. Knox walked the fence with his Winchester easy in one arm. From the eastern ridge he saw a rider against the stars. The man did not approach. Knox did not fire. He let him see that Rhodes Ranch had a watchman, and that the watchman was awake. On his second pass, light still showed in the office window. Cleo had fallen asleep over the ledger with her boots on. The strongbox key was looped around her wrist with rawhide. Even asleep, she kept one hand on what was hers. Knox had always taken work by the season, because a season ended before a place could ask anything of him. Looking at Cleo asleep in her boots, he wondered when freedom had begun to resemble loneliness with better scenery. At dawn, frost silvered the troughs. Pinky Gentry came out of the cookhouse carrying a tin plate. She was 60, perhaps older, and regarded birthdays as an Eastern habit with no practical use. 2 biscuits, she said. Both burned the same. It is the only justice left in this territory. Knox took the plate. "You ever consider mercy?" "Once. It made the beans soft." The office door opened. Cleo crossed the yard with a crumpled paper, held it to the cookstove flame, and dropped the blackened sheet into the ash pail. "If that was a bill," Pinky said, "burning it has never worked for me." "Another offer from Harrison Pickett," Cleo replied. "He says Rhodes Ranch cannot survive without his protection. He also says I should not depend on a cowboy who never stays past tally." Knox bit into a biscuit and found the center nearly raw. Pinky's justice had limits. Pickett has many opinions for a man who hires others to brand his calves. Cleo's mouth twitched. The near smile changed her face so quickly that Knox almost forgot the biscuit. Then she caught him noticing and tucked it away. "You are on the South Line today, Shaw?" "I am." "I will take the North Wells." He nodded. After the kiss, closeness without reason would feel like pressure. He could give her room without pretending he did not want to cross it. The day passed quiet enough to make him distrust it. On the south fence, he found a clean cut and the print of an uneven bar shoe. He marked the place and followed the tracks until stones swallowed them. Just before midnight, the ground began to tremble. Nearly 80 cattle were moving toward a narrow arroyo where rustlers could trap them and cut out calves. Knox drove his gelding down the slope. 2 hands fought to hold the rear, and Cleo was already on the eastern flank, riding hard through the dust. His first instinct was old and simple. Draw the colt, fire above the herd, take command. He reached her with the revolver half clear of leather. Then he saw her measuring the grade, the wind, and the pine stand above the arroyo. She knew every fold of this land. If he ordered her back now, he would become one more man using danger as proof she should surrender authority. Knox shoved the colt home. "Which route, boss?" he shouted. Cleo stared for one brief instant. The pine slope. "Leave me a gap at the head and drive the left flank uphill." "You heard her, pine slope. Give her room." He carved out the gap she had asked for. Cleo drove into it, cracked her whip above the horns, and turned the lead steer uphill. Knox carried her commands down the line. The hands answered. Slowly the herd bent away from the arroyo. They saved most of the cattle. 8 calves disappeared in the confusion. Near the wash, Cleo tried twice to unhook her canteen. Knox wanted to take it. Instead, he held out the lantern until she freed the buckle herself. "You turned them," he said. "We turned them." That one word warmed him more than it should have. He lowered the lantern to the mud. The same uneven bar shoe showed at the edge of the arroyo. "Pickett's gray patrol horse," Cleo said. "I watched his farrier fit it last month." Knox offered no conclusion. She needed no man to translate evidence on her own ground. They rode back after 3. Pinky had coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe, and eggs gone hard at the edges. She counted the empty places on the calf list. 8 missing, she said, and 1 biscuit missing from yesterday. Knox raised a hand. "I confess. Different crime, same hanging." Cleo laughed before she could stop herself. The sound was low and brief, but it followed Knox into morning. Harrison Pickett rode into the yard after breakfast, with 3 men wearing the green neckerchiefs of his self-appointed range patrol. He was broad through the middle, silver at the temples, and careful with his gloves. "Miss Rhodes," he called. "I heard about your trouble. Terrible thing rustling." Cleo stood on the porch. "I have not sent word to town." Pickett's smile held. "So, how did you hear?" "News travels." "Not faster than dawn." One rider shifted in his saddle. He was the youngest of the 3, mounted on a gray whose left forefoot landed a fraction late. Pickett glanced toward Knox. "Perhaps your drifter talks more than you know." Men who lose cattle often spread blame. Anger rose hot in Knox. Pickett wanted him to reach for the colt, to turn suspicion into spectacle, and Cleo into a woman whose hand had to speak for her. Knox stayed still. Cleo came down 1 step. "My foreman found a cut fence and a bar shoe print. If your patrol protects this valley, tell me where that gray gelding stood last night." The young rider looked at Pickett. Pickett did not look back. "My offer remains," Pickett said. "Sell the eastern section, or let my men take over your night watch." Pride is costly. So is trespass. Pickett touched 2 fingers to his hat. When the buyers see your losses, perhaps we will speak plainly. He rode out. Cleo watched the green neckerchiefs disappear, then faced Knox. Spring tally is in 3 days. You work for me until it is finished. After that, I will pay you in full. There it was, an ending spoken before either of them could risk wanting a beginning. Knox could have reminded her of the kiss. Instead, he said, 3 days. I will have the herd ready. Her eyes flickered as though his calm hurt more than an argument. Then she went inside. Over the next 2 days, they worked in a careful rhythm. They met at noon to compare counts, and separated before silence could become intimacy. Knox never touched the saddled bay mare. When he found her water pouch empty, however, he filled it and tied it back exactly as Cleo had left it. She noticed. I did not ask you, no. Do not make a habit of tending what is mine. Then tell me to stop. I just did. All right. He walked away. At noon, a fresh strip of bacon lay between the 2 burned biscuits on his plate. Pinky denied all knowledge. Cleo did not look up from the ledger. That afternoon, they took a wagon to the Crossroads store for salt and lamp oil. Pickett stood on the boardwalk holding court with 2 cattlemen. Still here one night, cowboy, he called. Thought you would have found a new bunk. Knox stepped onto the boards. Your cattle receive better care than your manners. A seasonal hand ought not mistake a woman's need for an invitation. Knox moved 1 pace closer. Before he answered, Cleo came between them, not as a shield, but as the owner of the business Pickett was belittling. Mr. Salazar, she said to the storekeeper, put 12 salt blocks on my account. Mr. Shaw will load them because he works for Rhodes Ranch, until I decide otherwise. The boardwalk went quiet. She had not called Knox hers. She had done something harder. She had made his place a matter of her authority. Yes, ma'am, he said, and carried the blocks. On the ride home, they counted yearlings in the north pasture. Knox came up 1 short 3 times. Again, Cleo said, That roan calf has no respect for arithmetic. He keeps moving behind my horse. A laugh escaped her, quick and bright. Knox had seen her furious, cold, bone-tired, and brave. He had not known laughter would be the thing that made him want more than a season. Her smile faded under his gaze, but she did not ride ahead. That night, Cleo worked over the books past midnight. Knox took the watch from 2 until dawn, left the supply shed key where she could reach it, and trimmed the porch lantern low enough not to glare in the office window. Near 4, Cleo came outside wrapped in a shawl. You will freeze, she said. Not before breakfast. That was not humor. Pinky has lowered my standard. She came down into the yard. Do you always leave when the work is done? Yes. Why? Because no one can send a man away from a place he has already left. Her face changed, not softened, recognized. That sounds efficient. It has been. And has it made you happy? No. The answer hung between them. Cleo looked toward his shoulder. You winced, lifting salt. There is liniment in the cookhouse. That was 12 blocks and an insult to my age. Use the liniment, Knox. It was the first time she had spoken his given name since the porch. When he entered the cookhouse, a clean towel lay folded beside his plate, with a small tin on top. Pinky slapped his hand when he touched the cloth. Either use it or marry it. Breakfast is getting cold. The ache in his shoulder eased by noon. The ache elsewhere did not. The next afternoon, a hard gale came shrieking down from the peaks. A tie line snapped like a pistol shot. Rails cracked against their posts, and frightened cattle bawled as part of the east herd broke toward the ravine. Knox reached the lead animals first, but instead of sealing the turn himself, he held the gap Cleo called for. She swung the cattle toward the pine slope, and the danger passed in a rush of dust, pounding hooves, and wind-torn cries. Back in the yard, she landed hard from the saddle. Knox caught her elbow, then released it the instant she steadied. "Thank you for leaving the gap," she said. "You knew the ground. You trusted me with the herd." "It is your herd." Promises came cheap on the frontier. Changed behavior costs more. A folded paper showed beneath Knox's saddle blanket. Pickett's seal marked the bottom. The note offered double wages and a permanent place on the range patrol if Knox left Rhodes Ranch before tally. Cleo read the first lines. "More than I can pay." Knox crumpled it and dropped it. Why? He looked toward the bunkhouse where his saddlebags had remained half-packed since he arrived. Keeping them ready had once felt sensible. Now they looked too much like Cleo's mare. "I do not want his money," he said. "I do not want his room. And I do not want to ride away from you." The truth frightened him more than Pickett's men ever had. Cleo went still. "I am not asking you to answer today," Knox added. "You asked for one night. I know. And now I am trying not to ask for more than you can freely give." Pinky's voice rang from the cookhouse. "Buyers reached Las Vegas. Tally starts here at 9 tomorrow. And every fool on this ranch will need feeding before sunrise." The moment closed, but not completely. Cleo picked up Pickett's offer and fed it to the stove herself. The morning of the tally came hard and bright. 3 northern buyers waited near the corral with ledgers. Neighboring ranchers lined the fence, all aware that if Pickett forced Rhodes Ranch under, smaller outfits would be next. Cleo wore a dark riding skirt and her father's silver watch pinned inside her jacket. She moved through the yard, calling counts and assigning gates. Knox stayed close enough to hear, far enough not to turn support into shadow. Harrison Pickett arrived with 4 armed men and laid a broadside on the tally table. "Before anyone buys Rhodes cattle," he announced, "you should know the man guarding them." The paper carried a rough woodcut resembling Knox and the name Knox Shaw. The charge was cattle rustling along the Santa Fe Trail. Silence spread through the yard. The buyers stepped back. "Hand him over to my patrol," Pickett told Cleo. "Then we may discuss how much of this place can be saved under proper management." One of his men reached for the tally ledger. Knox caught his wrist, bent it just enough to stop him, and placed his hand back at his side. "That belongs to Miss Rhodes." Pickett's hand drifted toward his coat. Every old instinct urged Knox to step in front, draw first, and settle the matter. But this was her ranch, her name, her choice. "Where do you want me to stand?" he asked. For one moment, Cleo looked like the woman who slept in her boots so no one could surprise her. Then her shoulders squared. "Beside me, not in front of me." Knox moved to her right, his hand clear of the Colt. "I am not going with you, Pickett. You hold no lawful badge in New Mexico territory. The buyers will not risk their money on a ranch that shelters a thief." The eldest buyer glanced at the broadside. "I cannot sign while this hangs over the tally." "You have until sunset," Pickett told Cleo. "Send Shaw away, or watch your sale collapse." He withdrew to the far side of the yard. Cleo stared at the false name. Believing Knox might cost her the sale, the ranch, and every hand who depended on her. Asking him to leave would cost less on paper. Knox hated that love, if that was what this had become, had arrived disguised as another burden she must carry. "Sleep in the bunkhouse tonight," Cleo said without looking at him. "I will have your wages ready after tally." The words struck clean. He nodded. My choice is to stay. Yours is to send me away. I will honor it. Knox worked through noon, checked brands, and answered every count the buyers asked for. At the bunkhouse, he rolled his blanket and buckled his saddlebags, but left them on the cot. Carrying them to his horse would have looked like an accusation. Late in the afternoon, he brought the final ledger to the office. Cleo sat behind the desk, with the wanted broadside beside her account books. She had spent years checking freight bills, cattle contracts, and notes written by men who hoped a widow's daughter would overlook what they slipped between the lines. The edge of the name strip did not lie flat. Paste had darkened the paper, and one corner bore the shallow crescent of a knife. Cleo drew her small penknife from the ledger drawer and worked the blade beneath the strip. The name Knox Shaw lifted away. Under it, printed in the original ink, was Elias Vance. Knox watched her face, not the paper. "Is any part of that charge yours?" she asked. "No." She laid the false strip beside Pickett's offer. The paper had the same yellow cast and the same rough-cut edge. Proof lay beneath her fingers, but the proof did not answer the question that mattered. If she kept Knox only because paper cleared him, then she had trusted ink instead of the man who had stood beside her when ink turned against him. Knox set the ledger down. 47 yearlings in the north lot. The roan still objects. Her mouth trembled. He touched his hat and left. He rode to the north pasture to hold the herd while the buyers waited. His saddlebags sat ready in the bunkhouse, and his horse would not stand easy. He had spent years believing departure hurt less when a man chose the hour. Now he knew leaving first did not lessen the loss. It only denied the other person a voice in it. Cleo came through the pasture gate on foot. The broadside was not in her hand. "Are you taking Pickett's job when you leave?" she asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because I do not want a job that begins with betraying you." "What do you want?" Knox looked at the woman who kept an escape saddled beside her porch and had still walked into an open field to ask a question she could not take back. "I want the mornings," he said. "I want Pinky's ruined coffee and the calf that cheats at counting. I want to argue over fences and hear you call the turn when cattle break. I want to stay long enough that you stop thinking every kindness comes with a bridle hidden inside it." Cleo's eyes shone, but her voice stayed firm. "And if I never become easy, I did not ask for easy. If I tell you no, I ride when tally is done, and I do not punish you for it. The paper is forged. I know. I left it on the desk." Knox waited. "The paper can clear your name," Cleo said, "but it cannot tell me who you are. I saw that when you put your gun away, you asked for my route. I saw it when I told you to stop tending my horse, and you stopped, though it cost you something." Her gaze moved toward the ranch buildings. "I have spent years proving no man could take this place from me. Somewhere along the way, I began treating every hand held out to me as another claim. I do not want Pickett to choose my future. I do not want to fear choosing it either." Knox said nothing. Silence was the only room he could give her that did not come with a demand. "I am not asking because of the paper," Cleo said. "I am asking because you trusted my judgment, because you did not make me smaller so you could look brave, because when I sent you away, you left the choice mine, even though it hurt you." Her breath shook once. "Tally starts again in 10 minutes. I need you beside me. Not as a hired gun, not as a guard." She lifted her chin. "As the man I choose." Knox swung down. Every part of him wanted to pull her close, but he stopped an arm's length away. "Say it once more. Not because I doubt you, because I have waited my whole life to hear a choice that was not a wage." Cleo stepped into the space he had left. "I choose you, Knox." He took her hand. "Then let us go count some cows." A wet laugh escaped her. 47 yearlings. 46 and one outlaw. They returned together. Cleo took her place at the towie table. Rhodes Ranch is not for sale. Mr. Shaw is not leaving. Harrison Pickett's patrol has no authority here, and no man under his command will touch my cattle, my books, or anyone in my employ. Pickett laughed. Then you choose ruin for a drifter. No, I choose who stands on my land. The eldest buyer looked at Knox. Shaw, I will pay twice her wage if you ride my herd north and clear your name. Knox turned his back on the offer and faced Cleo. Before the valley, he threaded his fingers through hers. I am where I mean to be. Her hand tightened. Are you certain? He asked. Yes. The answer reached deeper than the kiss under the lantern. That night she had chosen not to run. Now she chose to remain where everyone could see. Cleo laid the broadside on the tally table and peeled back the name strip before the buyers. Elias Vance, she said. Pickett pasted Knox's name over the original. A murmur moved through the yard. Pickett's face hardened. Paper proves nothing about me, he said. No, Cleo replied. The horse does. Knox crossed to the youngest patrolman's gray gelding. The rider pulled the reins, but two neighboring ranchers closed the way. Knox lifted the animal's left forefoot. An uneven bar crossed the shoe, one end worn lower than the other, and a fresh crescent nick marked the outside iron. The same shoe printed the mud beside the cut fence and the arroyo where 8 calves vanished, Knox said. Miss Rhodes named this horse before you ever brought the false broadside. The young rider went pale. Cleo faced him. You can tell these buyers why your horse stood there, or you can answer as the rustler who rode him. The boy looked at Pickett. You said the print would wash out. Pickett's hand moved. The rider's words came faster. He ordered the fence cut, said we were only to scatter the herd and pen the calves until she sold. He made the broadside in his office. I did not know he meant to hang Shaw with it. The boy stared at the exposed shoe, then at the ranchers blocking the gate. Pickett had left him no road except the truth. The yard erupted, but Cleo kept command. Close the west corral. No shooting unless a man fires first. Pickett reached for his revolver. Knox drew his Colt before the weapon cleared leather. Leave it. The 2 remaining patrolmen shifted toward their own guns, but neighboring ranchers closed around them from both sides, rifles held low and steady. Neither man found enough room to draw. Pickett stood alone in the center of the yard. There was no flourish in the moment, only a line he could not cross. Cleo stood beside Knox, not behind him. Take off the gun belt. Your own rider has named you before witnesses. Pickett looked from Knox's steady Colt to the ranchers closing around him. He unbuckled the belt and let it fall. Pinky rapped a spoon against her iron skillet from the cookhouse porch. Lay it down gently, she called. I have stewed on, and foolishness has spoiled enough today. A few ranchers laughed without lowering their weapons. The buyers held Pickett and 2 men in the tack room until a deputy could ride from Las Vegas. The young rider led Rhodes's hands to the hidden pen, and they recovered 6 missing calves before dark. The sale resumed, and the buyers signed a fair winter contract. Yet what stayed with Knox was Cleo at the tally table, giving orders with his handprint still warm in hers. At dusk, Pinky fed the buyers stew, and warned that witnesses to fraud received no second helping unless they washed their own bowls. Cleo found Knox near the porch. The same lantern burned above them. The bay mare stood saddled at the rail, ready for a road. Cleo no longer watched. I begged for one night, Knox said. You did. I kissed you before you answered. You did that too. I have considered apologizing. Have you? No. Her smile came slowly. Good. It would be a poor start to honesty. He lifted his hand, but waited. May I? Cleo placed his palm against her cheek. Knox kissed her. This time, there were no hidden riders beyond the gate, and no fear he mistook for permission. She rose onto her toes and gripped his coat because she wanted him close. When they parted, he kept his forehead against hers. I still want the mornings. You can have tomorrows. And the one after. You may ask after breakfast. That sounds uncertain. It is the best offer on this ranch. I accept. Cleo crossed the bay mare and loosened the cinch. She lifted the saddle, staggered, and glared when Knox took half its weight. I had it. I know. Then why are you helping? Sharing weight is not the same as stealing it. She considered that, then let him carry his half. Together they set the saddle on the porch rail. Cleo slipped off the bridle and opened the corral. The mare trotted inside, rolled in the dust, and stood with her head low among the other horses. The gate is still open, Knox said. Cleo leaned back against him as his arms came around her waist. I know. An open gate could mean two opposite things. It could wait for flight, or it could remain open because no one inside feared being held. By autumn, Knox's saddlebags hung empty on a peg in the room beside Cleo's, except on days they rode to Las Vegas together. They went that October to negotiate winter beef contracts. Cleo rode neither behind him nor ahead. They entered town at the same pace, arguing over whether the roan yearling had learned arithmetic. He is a steer now, Cleo said. Maturity may have improved him. Age has not improved Pinky's biscuits. Pinky heard you say that last week. Then these may be my final words. Cleo laughed, and Knox looked at her without hiding what the sound did to him. Back at Rhodes Ranch, the porch lantern remained unlit in the clear evening. The gate swung freely in the mountain wind. In the corral, the bay mare slept without saddle or bridle. Knox had begged for one night, because one night was all he believed he could be given. Cleo gave him the mornings only after he proved he would never close the gate behind her.